and welcome to the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's now 7 o'clock and I'd like to start the meeting. So I am Councillor Val Morris-Cook and the chair of this committee. I would like to remind everybody present that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded for publication on the Council's website. Officers attending virtually on Microsoft Teams, please use the raise your hand option when you wish to speak, and Rihanna will note this down and will let me know. This is the first meeting of the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Just going forward, I have asked officers to look at the feasibility of us having these meetings around the borough so they're not just in the council offices, because I think we've really spoken about trying to be open, transparent with our residents, and I think it's something that would be really well received with the public. So we will look at how we can go to all four corners of the borough and to see how we can utilise these meetings around the borough rather than just in the council offices, which is extremely difficult to get in. Okay, item 1. Rihanna, do we have any apologies? I don't think so. Look like we've got a full house.
No apologies this evening.
Okay, perfect. Item 2 is I'd like to move the minutes of the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee of the 24th of January 2023, 27th of February 2023 to be approved as a correct record. I'm not sure if anybody in the room was actually at those meetings that possibly could say, Joy, you were there, anybody else? Thank you. Going forward, Councillor Pearce, can you just use your microphone, please? So I'll let you off this time. So I'm really deferring to you to say if you believe these are a true record.
I agree. What was that? Yeah.
Agree.
Thank you. Perfect. So we will now say that the minutes have been approved. Item 3, I haven't actually agreed to any other items of urgent business. Item 4, anybody have any declarations of interest?
No.
I take that as no. Item 5, I'm just going to ask Rihanna, this is about terms of reference, to talk about the terms of reference. Thank you, Rihanna.
Thank you, Chair. So on page 19 of your agenda, you have the terms of reference for this committee. This is contained within the Constitution and sets out what areas this committee covers and essential information such as the quorum for the meeting. This is merely to draw members' attention to what you are constitutionally required to do as part of this committee. This is just to note this item. Thank you.
Anybody wish to comment on that?
No.
Happy to note that. Duly noted. Thank you. Item 6, so we now move on to Fees and Charges Review 2023 to 2024, and I'm going to be asking Stephen Myers, the CFO, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. The paper is in front of this committee and is going to the other scrutiny committees and will then go on to Cabinet, and we will report on all of the comments that scrutiny make. Members will no doubt be aware that in the budget report in March of this year, the Commissioners noted the improved budget, but also commented that further financial work was needed to improve the sustainability of the Council, and specifically said this includes, but is not restricted to, a full review of fees and charges by the end of Q1, so the 30th of June of this year. Clearly, it's also important for the Council to do what it can, in whatever way it can, to address the financial challenges that the Council faces. The Commissioners will also, I believe, be writing to Government in this month. They may have done so, and will want to comment on the Council's responses to the various recommendations and comments that they have made. Hence, the desire to get this through and to inform and involve Commissioners and committees in this. So the main features of the work that are set out in the time that we have had to work on this are that firstly, a policy is enclosed, This will and has been reviewed by the commissioners. We will feed in their input, and they recommend this as good practice, and they are very content with the policy. We've begun to examine benchmarking and some price reviews. A second stage will be further price reviews. Once we get through this process, we will then work through this and come back as part of the normal budget cycle for further reviews. And the longer term piece of work, which in experience suggests will take 2 to 3 years, is to look beyond the individual fees and charges that we currently levy and assess whether they should change, but to look at the profitability of all of your services, and is the council actually charging for what it can charge for? Does it know what it is subsidising, and take account of that? That will be a longer piece of work. So we set it out as a 3-stage process. The principal elements of the policy are to recommend full cost recovery, so you are not providing hidden subsidies unless you specifically agree to do so, and as a minimum, annual increases in accordance with CPI. The elements of the policy talk about the timetable, we talk about the basis of charging, we give an example at the back of the policy of items to include and not include, we touch on the council's financial position, and the various categories of charge that a council can levy. And several price increases are enclosed. They cover a range of services. Clearly, we've brought the totality to each committee so members are fully aware of the policy and the various changes, and colleagues will be able to address any specific questions on the specific ones within the remit of the committee that we have here. Happy to take any further questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I have some, so I'll start. Okay, if I'm honest, I'm actually generally concerned with this report because I think it has a huge impact on our residents, and obviously our residents have had a near 10% council tax, as well as now we've had charges that have been increased from April the 1st, and now we're looking at more further charges. And whilst I understand the principle behind what you're saying, I would have liked to have seen within this fees and charges, we talk about full cost recovery. At no point do we say the cost of those services and possibly what their outturn has been over the past 3 years, because obviously you've had COVID, so it's not sometimes been real. So to understand that, because I think that would have given us a clearer picture on what we're actually doing. I couldn't see, and it may be that I wasn't particularly reading it as well as I should have done, but I didn't see where any subsidies were possibly being adhered to or addressed on that either. I also have concerns where we talk about full cost recovery and we talk about it incorporating staff costs. And I look at what the council has been through over the last couple of years, and some of the higher salaries, some of the number of consultants that have been brought into this council, and really we're now looking to recharge those against these fees and charges to do the full, as you say, cost recovery, possibly as well as covering other staffing costs that we know happen within the business. And I look and I think, why should our residents pay yet another surcharge to cover what consultants have been in previously that possibly haven't done an effective or value for money role, and yet we're having to take that money back again from our residents. I also have a few points to call out. Whilst I know that some of these aren't really within the remit of this scrutiny, I think it would be wrong for me not to. So if I look at Grange Waters, just for instance, there has actually been a profit in Grange Waters. So are we saying that we are comfortable to accept the profit and not take that off of the proposed charge increases? Do we expect to have profitable, or do they really just need to in effect, if you put it, wipe their face clean so they cover their costs? And I have concerns with that because it is a well-used place that a lot of people go to. Increasing fees with people with a more challenging time of increased prices everywhere might possibly not utilise it. I then go on to the Thames side, and if I look at some of the charges you're proposing to increase there, it is an average of around 14%. But similar services that are charged for in the council offices have only gone up by approximately 6 to 7%. And really, to me, I look at that and is that really another way of really pushing the Thames side to be closed? Because it states very clearly in the report that this will have a dramatic effect on the footfall. It will also have an effect on schools because schools will not be able to have those higher charges. You spoke about CPI, and are we looking at CPI now? Are we looking at what the predictor is going forward? Because clearly, whilst it hasn't dropped considerably, we know that CPI has dropped over the last couple of months. Are we looking at basing it on now or what the future is? And there was a few, I mean, this is a technical thing, there were a few missing. Appendix 3 wasn't showing in the report. Obviously, you could find it, but it wasn't particularly easy. I'm not going to take up all the time, I'm just going to see if, but they are my comments. Anybody else wish to comment on the... Councillor Redsall.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just Val's mentioned a couple of things for me. I've obviously have spoken to people at Grange Waters, and I thought it was actually slowing down and not doing as much as they normally do over there. I had people come to speak to me to, you know, they were getting quite worried of where it was going. And I know bits go out there and people listen to, you know, phones and everything else. So I'm just worried about that. The only other thing I will say on the fees and charges, has there actually been any consultations done with some of the clubs and at all, just to ask how they feel? That is something I'd like to know, because I can't find it now, but I did read it and it said that no consultations had been done. So I just wondered why there was nothing there for me to sort of get our teeth into. The other thing was actually the request for bus stop suspension in the middle of Grays. Does that mean that the bus stop will now move to the one-way system where it used to be in the first place? Or, because it's 14 months is a long time, people coming off the station, they've got quite a walk to get. Just a bit more clarity on that, please. I'll probably come back with some other questions at a later date.
Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, I think with the current cost of living crisis, the fact that we've put the council tax up 10% and now we're increasing our fees and charges, the people haven't got the money. What is the impact? Have we done an impact study on what's going to happen to those people or those clubs that can no longer afford to rent pitches, or you know, they no longer afford to rent venues for dance shows or other shows, etc. Those young people, the skills they're going to miss, what's going to happen to them, how are we going to help them out? It's not just the fact to increase the charges and we get the money in. There's a bigger impact on this. We just seem to be thinking about money grabbing. And I just think I'm just really, really shocked by it. I just think it's not right. Our residents have been through enough. And now we've increased them in April. Now we're going to do it again. And then we're going to look to do it again later on. And I just don't think it's right. There was other points that have been covered already, but that is my main feeling about it. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Well, I'm more than happy for officers to come back if they'd like to get a word in edgeways. Who would like to address some of these?
I'll pick up the ones I can, Chair, and the ones I can recall. Helpful to come in, thank you. And hopefully colleagues will be able to assist with some points of detail. And if we can't, then we'll certainly come back to the committee outside of the meeting. So on your point about council tax, I do fully appreciate that. As you will know, it is not unique to Thurrock, but it is only a limited number that had such a large increase. However, irrespective of that, and picking up the councillor's comment across there, this is not money grabbing. This is trying to assist the council to get into a sustainable financial position to allow it to deliver the services in the future. Now is not the time to go through all of the major financials, but you clearly have a very large financial a challenge to deal with, and this will make a small contribution to that, and that is why we are doing this, to sustain services in the future, not to grab money in that sense. Other councils, as you will appreciate, do levy fees and charges. Some have been going through this sort of review for several years, and therefore will be feeling the financial benefits of that. Thinking about the outturn of services, the policy is about full cost recovery. So yes, staff will be in that because they are a cost of the council, be they permanent staff, agency staff, interim workers, all those sorts of things. The point about subsidies to address, until you have agreed the policy and we have been able to work through the policy, which will take quite a while to review all the costing mechanisms of the council and make sure all the recharges out there, we cannot be certain whether something that appears to be making a profit is actually making a profit, or is it potentially, and I don't say it is, but potentially a consequence of not charging the correct costs in there. And that is the work we need to do and will do and come back to committees over the next 2 or 3 years. That, therefore, I think starts to address your concern about the service Grange Waters. Clearly, a colleague will be at Children's Services Scrutiny and be able to answer in more detail, and we'll make sure that everything comes back through to Cabinet. None of this is intended at all to push anything to close. It is a desire to find money for the council to allow it to function in the future. CPI at the moment was at the point in time. It's a very good point about looking forward. As you will appreciate, it fluctuates, and anybody who tells you they can guarantee, and I know you're not saying that, what it is in the future will be in a different position, but we'll take that on board. The point about the consultation, again, I totally agree. This is a reflection of work that we have done from the middle of April until the end of May to put the council in a very positive position with the commissioners and to help its financial sustainability. So there has been a slight limit to what we've been able to do, but colleagues have done everything they can to consult where they can. Stage 2 will allow us to do more of that in the future. On the specifics of the bus stop, this paper is simply to get back a reasonable sum of money for that for the council. I'm sorry, I can't answer as to exactly what will happen to the bus stop itself, but I will take that back and get a colleague to come back to you, Councillor, on that. I think those are the questions I was asked, but if I missed any, very happy to pick up, or any colleagues might want to supplement those.
I believe, is it Stephen Taylor wants to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was just going to address the point about the Thameside fees and charges increases versus some of the others. So the formula that's been used is essentially looking at inflation over the last 5 years, comparing prices 5 years ago with where they are now. The prices at the Thameside hadn't increased in line with inflation. The percentage increases are the percentages they need to increase to be in line with inflation over that 5-year period. We did have a particular, as you'll appreciate, a particular concern about the theatre during the COVID pandemic, and tried to hold prices down where we could to maintain interest and demand in the service when it was able to reopen. But just wanted to try and explain that for you.
Can I just come back on that? Because I think that's a really interesting point you make, because I am aware in some other instances where we have looked, and we talk about missed bins. So if we look at missed bins, we look like we had really quite a very good outturn when we had the refuse workers on strike, because we didn't actually include that, okay? So we can't really pick and choose what we include and what we don't. So during COVID, loads of things shut down, including the Thameside. So I would really challenge you on utilising that time period and that inflation to work out what the Thameside costing should be going forward.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I understand the point. As Stephen explained, we were taking a approach across the council to fees and charges, and it was looking at the inflation over the past 5 years and the uplift. But I understand the point you're making, but that's what's happened and that's what's recorded in the paper.
Not particularly fair, is it? Mr. Redsill?
Thanks, Dave, for that. Just on the brought up the Thames side. I think people on the whole don't mind paying for something that is better than what they've got now. I mean, if you go to theatres across Essex, you will find that they're very different from the Thames side. And I'm not for the Thames side going or anything. I think we should have something in place to replace it before we even think about what we're going to do with it. But I think if we're going to up and I was looking at the charges and they're quite high, some of them. And if we're going to have that and have nothing to make people want to go there, you know, it did stop at one point, people going into the Thames side and booking, because a lot of people don't use the old, you know, computers, and that was stopped for a little while, so that stopped people going. But I think if you look at the Thames side in its entirety, it's not comfortable. You're very close to each other, and, you know, we need to address that. If we're going to put up charges, that money has to go perhaps, you know, back into the pot a little bit to make it a better building inside.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Pearce, did you wish to ask your questions?
Thank you, Chair. It's about the fees and charges. Has the council thought about raising income from licence fee charges for events in parks? Like more and more organisers are looking for venues, aren't they? And for festivals, farmers markets and Eid events. Are the officers actually talking to the organisers about what Thurrock can offer us? Thank you.
Who would like to take that?
I will do my best, Councillor. I think we are doing exactly what you described, because part of the report does actually reference things we've picked up as we've gone round on this, but we haven't yet been able to analyse in detail. So we do talk about areas to be considered in the future, which my colleagues will be doing with other people in the council, such as events and hiring. And there is a list on the third page of the report that gives 4 examples. They are not proposed to increase now because we couldn't get all the work done in the time. They are things we will look at in the second stage of the process and come back to you. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. A point of interest from me, because this is the first year I've been on this committee, so I've not had opportunity to ask this before, but for our burials and cemetery services that we've got here, obviously this is a very sort of emotive issue, important as well. How do we benchmark against other authorities when it comes to these charges? We do have a little table on page 47 showing some benchmarking. I don't know if these are including the bereavement services, but they didn't really strike me as a bereavement service. I just thought I'd check to see if we've got any benchmarking on those.
The benchmarking that we've set out in the paper is the ones we have been able to work out so far. So the page 47, just looking at that now, that is a number of things that we charge for. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, it's not a particular price. The purpose of this is to demonstrate that on the face of it, and the thing with benchmarking is more work needs to be done every time, it would appear that Thurrock is potentially not charging for everything that it could do, but we need to do more work on that. On the specifics of burials, I'm sorry, it's not my area of expertise, but I'm sure.
I think Vincent would like to come in. Sorry.
Good evening,
Don't take
Chair.
it personally.
No, definitely not at all. Yes, just letting you know, the Registrar of Burials only about 2 or 3 years ago done a piece of work around benchmarking with other local authorities within the area, and our fees and charges are very comparable to those.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay.
More of a comment, Chair, just to say that you know, I understand, you know, given the economic situation, the cost of living, I understand that, you know, there will be a lot of concerned councillors. I'm one of them, concerned residents about these charges increasing, but you know, ultimately I would like to see the council sustainable in the long term. So I'm not happy with a lot of these increases, and I will still rail against my personal gripes, like charging residents for their parking outside their home with the parking permits. I don't like those. I think they should go. But you know, broadly, I understand why we're adopting this policy. I'm not happy about it, but I will be voting for the recommendations here tonight.
Just have something else, something that, and I know that legally there is caps on what we can charge for parking and different things, but I look at some of the things that go on in Thurrock, and there seems to be a lack of consequence for unacceptable behaviour. And that could be parking on verges, it could be stopping the refuse vehicles getting access to roads, which means that residents don't get their bins emptied. It could be, you know, HGV vehicles accessing incorrect weight. It could be, you know, when we look at our fly tipping and the fact we aren't using sort of bulky waste, we have got possibly a lot of unlicensed people that are collecting waste under the guise that they're going to take it and just move it and fly tip it because they're not licensed. I just look and I think, you know, are we missing a trick here? Whereas realistically, we really should be looking at as much enforcement for the wrong behaviours in order to not really constrict our residents and stop them paying the price of other people's poor behaviours. Because I think that would sometimes make a huge difference in what we are allowed to charge and what we aren't, because I know that there is a fine line, you know, we can't do what we actually want to do. But I do think that we should really be looking at that. You know, it affects our emergency services. You know, it's an eyesore when you see him parking on verges. It really is. And, you know, I think we all understand the position that the council's in, but at the end of the day, we've been voted in by residents who are frustrated, irritated, and really are feeling the strain of the cost of living. You know, they've had to have their council tax put up. Nothing that they have done wrong. You know, we are going to be like this for a long, long while, 4 or 5 years, until we become hopefully sustainable. I would ask, you know, when we're going through the recommendations, is it possible, if you do have some that are very hiked up, which is the Thames side, and I would urge you to review that with a view for when it was closed over COVID and take those out, can they be put on a pay journey and a fee journey, rather than, you know, hiking something up by 14, 16, sometimes 22%. Could you look at some pay journeys over a period of time? Because at the end of the day, that is really not a lot of money that is going to make a huge difference, but it could make a difference to closing something, making something as a sustainable business or not.
You're absolutely right. On the legals, there are certain prices, as you will appreciate, that are statutory set. On the general point of what we can charge for, we can fully cost recover. You cannot make a profit as a council at the margin, you know, year on year, allowing for that. That's acceptable. So we are seeking to get the council to a safe place, which is full cost recovery. On enforcement, I'll take that up with colleagues. Again, not my area of expertise, but very happy to have a conversation with them and see what the council can do. In terms of the specifics, I will obviously take account of the committee's wishes, but fundamentally we are going to have to do a lot of income improvement and cost reduction across the whole council. I fully appreciate the impact on residents and the consequences for them, but we have to try and make every penny that we can generate one way or another count as much as we possibly can. That is my reflection on that.
Okay. What I would like to see is, going forward, if we have these reports, which clearly we will, as you said, I would like to see what the cost recovery is, the expectation of it, and the current cost of service over the past 3 years, please.
Yes, we can certainly bring the actuals. I just repeat my point from before that it might not actually at this stage demonstrate cost recovery until we've worked through is everything being charged out properly. But yes, producing outturns is not a problem.
Councillor Redsill, and then we're going to move to the
Just a couple of quick questions, actually. There was, I'm not sure if it was a couple of OS's way, we had charges being put, I think Jahir was here and we had charges being put on anybody that puts up posts on a field has to pay the pitch fee. That hasn't happened, and we've not had something back either, because we've got about 4 teams playing on black shots at the moment. So that's not happening. I will speak to Jahan myself, but I just feel that we're losing a bit of revenue that we should be, because a lot of them are coming from London to here to play, you know. And the other thing was, I've got a lot of residents who want the £30 pick-up for 3 items, and they're not being picked up. They're saying to them that it can't be done at the moment.
Might be useful to wait until we do the waste report.
Yeah, but
the waste report might be helpful
could come up on that, yeah.
Are we happy to go through the recommendations? Okay. So recommendation, oh goodness me. Recommendation 1 is that the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee note the proposed fees and charges policy. Appendix 1 in particular agreeing to the commitment to full cost recovery and the annual CPI inflation increases as a default.
Great.
I would like to add, wait for it, Councillor Anderson, I would like to add that I would like our comments about full cost recovery and looking at profitability to be added to that, and looking at CPI going forward, not just taking a, like, say, April's CPI, which is normally always higher than the rest of the one going forward. I'd like our comments to be taken into consideration with these recommendations. Is that possible? Our comments? It could be pricey.
Take the comments through to Cabinet and inform them of your wishes, and we'll note the recommendation was agreed as well. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so recommendation 1.1. Are we happy to note that?
Yeah, agreed.
Can I have that from everybody? Noted. Noted with comments, please. 1.2, the Cleaner, Greener and Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee note the proposed fees and charges increase for the material areas on Appendix 2. Again, I would like to say that with our comments and our reservations that are added and our concerns for the residents. Happy to note that with recommendations? Good. The Cleaner, Greener, Safer Overview and Scrutiny note the proposed new charges in Section 8 of the report. Again, with our comments. And the Cleaner, Greener, Safer Overview and Scrutiny Committee note the requirement for further detailed review and analysis of the remaining fees and charges by Q4 2023/2024. I think that one is critical. But hopefully taking into account some of the things that we've spoken about, so that we get a full, comprehensive report that comes forward. Okay? Super.
Just for clarification, Chair, the minutes of this meeting will be annexed to the Cabinet report for July.
Thank you. That's helpful, because I don't want our residents to think that it's just been waved through easily, because I don't think it has at all. Okay. Item 7 is violence against women and girls, and we have Evelina Sobjan to report, to bring the report over to you.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. So my name is Evelina Sobjan. I'm the AD for
Sorry, you're going to, I really apologise. Can you just speak closer to the mic, because I think it will be very difficult, the recording. That's it.
Is that any better now? I'll move it even closer. I'll start again. So my name is Evelina Sobjan. I'm the AD for housing in my day job, as they say, but I come here today as a chair of the Thurrock's Violence Against Women and Girls Strategic Board. So the report in front of you is really an overview of the work done to date and steps we took to deliver on the strategy for the year 2020-2023, as well as we delivered against the Community Safety Partnership duties and 2 of the priorities there. And I also ask the committee to give your comments on our new strategy going forward, which is due to launch later in the year. The recommendations are really to note the progress on the delivery of that, let us share the successes with you, as well as comment on the vision going forward for the next committee. I won't go through the entire report. I assume you've read it. There's a lot of information added to it. I mean, key highlights, only what we've done in terms of delivery to date. It really starts from 2.7 in the report, and this is where I'd like to really shout about the work that has been going on across the council, across a number of departments, as well as partners out there. My colleague as well, Michael, is in the background, AD for that area, so we can always sort of chip in should you have any more sort of questions in regards to the successes. I also take you through the appendices, which is the new strategy for the next 3 years, as well as the spend on the funding that has been awarded for what is considered a new burden for local authority to ensure we deliver on the domestic abuse priorities we've got. You will no doubt note that there is an element of underspend there, and I am sort of happy to say that the next sort of report will give you a little bit more as to how we've actually spent the money when we managed to spend it. Other than that, I am open for any questions you may wish to pose to myself. As I say, Michael is in the background.
Okay. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Chair. I found this report very disturbing, actually, when you look at the figures. For instance, on page 102, a lot of young people just saying that the problems are so commonplace that there's no point in reporting them. That is really, I think we all need to take a step back and think that we've got our children growing up in a world where they can receive images of inappropriate images or comments, and it's just, there's no point in reporting it because nothing will get done, and that shouldn't be happening. And we keep saying that, but we don't seem to be doing much, or we don't seem to be getting any success in what we're doing to stop that. I've got various questions, if I may, Chair. Firstly, on the Safe Street website, how many residents have posted? This was on page 104. How many residents have posted on that? And when was it launched? Is it successful? Because I, just wanted to know more about that. Also the Ask Angela campaign. Now, I've heard of it, but I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of young people as well, and quite often when I speak to them, they haven't heard of it. And I wonder, is there any guidance? I know it was initially rolled out for clubs and pubs. If you was in a situation that you felt vulnerable, you could use the Ask Angela to get some help. Wondered if it could, is this something that could be launched out across the whole retail? If you're in a shop, if you're getting your coffee or you're doing your shopping and you find yourself in a situation that is uncomfortable, because there's a lot of young people that said to me, well, I don't know anything about that. And I think it's very important that we make sure people are aware that if they're feeling frightened or uncomfortable by certain behaviour or by certain people being followed, they can actually ask to get some help, to get them out of that uncomfortable situation and put them in a safe and get them safely where they need to be. We've got champions in the council. Councillor Arnold is the Violence Against Women and Girls champion, and I believe Councillor Collins, men's mental health issues champion. Just wondered if there's some more sort of details on, I might have missed this, on what the criteria is to being a champion, what they actually do, and how we measure the success of the champion that we've nominated for those two areas. And then the key adult model, which has been rolled out in schools, just is it in every school, include like primary, secondary and special needs schools? And how are we monitoring if that is working effectively and if children feel they're able to speak about a a subject that could be extremely hard for them to talk about, so we can get them the support that they need. And I was also very, very concerned about the fact that the carry forward, we're saying we could be starting off to do some really good things, but we're carrying forward a lot of money. There's a lot of work we can do when we know there's people that are sleeping rough because of domestic violence, and we're carrying forward, is it 490 odd pounds, or have I got that wrong?
490,000.
490,000, right.
That's nearly £500,000 that wasn't spent in the budget in the last 2 years.
And we've got, in the report, we've got 97% of girls said sexual assault, 88% of girls said receiving pictures of videos they didn't want to see is what's happening in the schools. We've got a lot of money that's not being used. So I'm not happy with the fact we've got all this money and we're not using it. It makes us, we obviously don't know where to use it. We're obviously not sure what's going on. We need to, if you like, be more on the ball. We shouldn't be having this money like that left over. I know it's really hard to report instances like that, and I get that. It is really hard. But we need to make it as easy as we can and signpost people and make sure people give them the opportunity, and especially educating everyone to acceptable behaviour so we don't make people feel uncomfortable or threatened. I know youngsters that are walking home after finishing work and they feel they're being followed and they've nowhere to go to because they're walking down the main road and there's no police around or the police stations are closed, and they just have to carry on walking and hope they get home before. And chances are nothing will happen to them. I'm not saying that, but it's just that fear, and that's what we've got to stop. And we've got to re-educate everyone to respect people more and to make sure those things don't happen. And it's a massive task, but it's just having so much rollover to next year that really worries me. That's, you know, that we're missing a major thing. Sorry, I've ranted. Sorry, Chair, I apologise.
No problem, I know you're passionate about it. Any other councillors wish to speak on this? Okay. I'll let Evelina give a chance to answer those questions.
I will do my best. I will probably be asking Mike, and he's already nodding, because some of the challenges you put to us, Councillor Kent-Earl, is slightly broader than the paper itself. But you are absolutely right. There is a lot of fear of crime out there, and the sort of the young people is absolutely an area that we need to do more. This is not necessarily this particular board, but I also attend the Safer Partnership board, where we absolutely focus on young people a lot, and there is a certain sort of program in schools, but I'll let Mike to talk a little bit about that. So if I take this in turn, so in terms of the sort of the funding, the overspend, again, I accept this should have been spent better and a lot quicker. There are some technical points around that, in that the funding is really associated and ring-fenced for safe accommodation, so there's got to be an element of accommodation, and the advice needs to be also sort of connected with the accommodation. The guidance on how to use the funding and how to sort of spend it actually came out towards the end of the 2021, so end of the calendar year. So the year was sort of pretty much over before we got the sort of guidance how to spend it, but the next financial year should have been better. There is a lot more spend allocated for this year, and actually has already been spent. Part of it is cost of running a refuge. We didn't think we could do that initially, but we have received advice that we can absolutely recharge it. A lot of the spending that was done, the additional advice, additional sort of work with children of women or parents that are affected by domestic abuse, was actually delivered within the refuge or within that safe accommodation. But I absolutely agree with you. We should do better on actually spending and providing that support. In terms of the Ask Angela campaign, I will take that on board and absolutely sort of, as we I will take that as almost a feedback on what the next strategy should focus on. It's a good campaign. I personally know about it, but you're right, we could probably do more in terms of how we can make that more popular in Thurrock or across the region, because a lot of this work is also at the regional level together with Southend and Essex. In terms of the measuring of the performance or effectiveness of the champions, I will need to get back to you on that one. I don't actually know how we measure that. Obviously, we've got the representatives sitting at the board, and I will just check how we actually do the sort of re-evaluation for that, and how long is the term, so to speak. The other points, which is around children and the reporting of safe street, Mike, if I could ask you about that.
Okay, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Evelina. Yeah, I think what's easier is obviously I'm the AD for community safety, and that includes the Community Safety Partnership, which has a big part to play here as well. So we liaise with our external partners, such as the police and other internal partners as well. Hence the reason we work closely with adults and housing, because some of these matters, they overlap quite significantly, as I'm sure you're aware from what you've said. I think you raise a very good point around the problem with young people and the fear that they have, and the frequency that they are subjected to these kind of, like you say, abusive images or words, etc. And I think that has to come back to education. So it must be fed back to the CSP, which I will do. I'll take this back to the district commander and others, and maybe raise this idea of going into the schools with more education surrounding sexual violence. Although I do know that is done as well. But I suppose there's never too much education in this sort of subject matter. So I will take that forward, and I'll take that back to the CSP, because that's the board that I sit on, and raise that issue. The only other thing really is crime within the CSP reports that I've seen, it can come down, but the perception of crime, the perception of fear continues to rise. And those two conflicting figures are sometimes difficult to comprehend, because we know crime in certain areas are going down, but the perception of it is going up. So again, that comes down to good engagement with the individuals that are involved. So that includes in any form of children clubs, youth groups and schools. So I'll be able to take that forward and put that to the CSP board, and hopefully we would be able to then as well allocate some of those funds separately, because one of the CSP priorities is violence against girls and women and girls.
Councillor Redstone.
Thanks for that, Michael. Just to ask, obviously I can see Councillor Kent's quite passionate about, we've had sort of these reports to quite a few committees, so we don't seem to be moving very far forward. Actually, sometimes we seem to be going backwards, and we're not taking it. I noticed there's one liner for men and boys. That's it. You know, that's all we do, and it does happen. I just can't. If we've got women that are being abused and in our home, it's very hard for them to leave a home because they have nowhere to go. And as far as I know, Evelina, have we only still got one home that is working home for mums and whatever to go to? Is that the only one we've got that I know of?
So we've got a couple. It's more than one. So we've got a hostel which is for single women or women with children, and absolutely we've got survivors of domestic abuse, sexual abuse there. We've also got Refuge, which is focused on sexual abuse, and that's female only. We have got male workers within the safeguarding team that absolutely can react and provide advice and service and safe accommodation if that's required for men. We have got very hard statistics that suggest that Men are not necessarily interested in refuge. They are interested in safe accommodation, but not a shared space such as refuge always is. So when men come to us as survivors of domestic violence or sexual violence, we will absolutely provide that accommodation to them in a way that they see it as they need it, not in terms of sort of setting up a refuge. This is a topic of conversation that we very often challenge ourselves on. Are we doing the right thing? And sort of the numbers that we're seeing coming to us asking for help and to police partners is really a lot more on the female side, which is what we really cater for more strongly. But we would not provide assistance to male survivors.
Yeah, just picking up on what Councillor Kent said, we seem to have a lot of things written down on lots of agendas, and we would keep coming to us for whatever committee we sit on, and we just don't seem to be getting anywhere really, you know. And I hate to repeat that again, but we do seem to be going backwards. There isn't any. If we could find some other way of getting to, because you can get to children in school, but I don't think sometimes it goes over the top of their head and doesn't really. You know, we've had a couple of areas where cars have been going around looking at children playing in play areas, and so that's something I'll pick up with Michelle anyway. But that's, you know, another thing. But while we're doing that, we need to move. This needs to move forward because it keeps coming back with nowhere to go really. Thank you.
I think reports like this are really, really important, and we can't fail every time there is one incident. I think, you know, as an authority, we're failing, aren't we? Because we would like to have an area at time where there is no sexual violence against women, children, boys, men. And I think that the thing that really concerns me when we talk about what we do for men, if we look at the statistics there, it said 6 in 100 of women will report, 3 out of 100 men. Now we know that for a man to come forward and report that is very, very difficult, because it's just life the way they would see it as a possible sign of weakness that shouldn't have happened to them. I do get concerned that if 3 there, how many more are hidden that actually aren't reporting? And it's possibly the same with girls. You know, you've got 6 coming forward because in the last couple of years there's been so much high profile that it's now more acceptable to report, and we want everybody to report anything because it's the only way we're going to make a difference. And picking up on what Councillor Kent said with the Ask Angela, if you think we've got a college over there and we've got a Burger King and we've got a Costa, I mean, how many of those college students would actually ask Angela in either the Costa or the Burger King? And hopefully they're not in the bars and pubs, you know, because there isn't an outlet for them to say, look, you know, I'm here with a crowd of people, but I'm really uncomfortable because X, Y, and Z is happening. You know, backing up what Councillor Kent said, 490,000 that was unspent, all due to mainly projects not being started, people not being recruited. You know, how many lives could that have made a difference to? How many children wouldn't have had to go through so much trauma? I know particularly since I've become a councillor this time, I've got 2 cases of people that are saying that nothing is being done to help them. They are subject to sexual and domestic abuse and nothing is being done. They are still in that situ, which to me is terrifying to think how those people must feel so trapped. So I really do ask, and you know, when we were talking about the different P's that are there to help, our new strategy, for me prevention is absolutely key in this. And we do a lot of work, which is great, on mental health, recognising different signposts of people's behaviour changing slightly, and like, you know, you okay? Because you recognise there's some slight change. We don't do anything with our schools, with our foster carers, with our parents, with, you know, children that are going there, teenagers that are going there, looking out for slight behaviour changes in their friends, what to look for, because that could, again, help. If we can stop something happening, we are saving some traumatic effect on their future lives. So I really would ask that, you know, we don't ever come back to this committee with a massive underspend, nearly £500,000 that could have made so much difference to so many. Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report, Evelina. I know this is quite subjective. Everyone will have different ideas of you know, what exactly should have more focus within wider strategies and the like. And one of the things for me is child sexual exploitation and grooming. I didn't feel as though there was enough of a focus in this strategy. I've been on the Hidden Harms Committee, and we had Thurrock in quite a while ago. They do some great work. I know you work alongside them a lot. And it was good to hear from them, because I asked the question there, you know, should we be concerned in Thurrock about the sort of grooming gangs that you hear have popped up across the country? And they said at this time they weren't seeing any evidence of that. But, you know, that doesn't mean they won't pop up, and it doesn't mean that perhaps we've just not seen them. So my first question is, can you give me an idea of what we're doing as a council to ensure that we don't end up one of those names like Rotherham, Telford and the like? And then my second point, just echoing what Councillor Redsill said, I think if we are going to mention men and boys in this strategy, there needs to be a bit more than what there is. I recognise that you know, women face more sexual violence like this. You know, you say you get a lot more women come forward. I'm sure that's the case. But at the moment, we just seem to have little sentences here and there. Men are sort of a footnote, and I think perhaps they should be taken out of this, and maybe another strategy formed, or whatever you want to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be this big, because, like you say, the issue doesn't affect men as much as it does women, from your experience with people coming forward and the like. But at the moment, the way men are sort of still a little footnote in this strategy that is called violence against women and girls, I just think isn't necessary. I think it should be extricated.
Would you like to answer that?
I'll try as best as I can. Your first point about whether we've got evidence of grooming, I think the best way to deal with that is to take it to the Violence Against Women and Girls Board, as well as the board that Mike mentioned, Safe Partnership, and actually make it an agenda item to check. To my knowledge, there's not been anything forthcoming, but we could absolutely commit to listing it as an item to check whether there's really still the same thing as Thurrock would advise, that there was an evidence of it in the borough.
Perfectly fine to take that forward to the CSP board as well, where we sit with the chief superintendent there, and I'll raise that point. And secondly, before Evelina jumps into point 2, I'll also take that back to my staff within the CSP around the male aspect of violence and sexual violence, and I would tend to agree. Let's take a little bit more of a look at that, rather than just the line that you're saying. But we'll take that away, most definitely.
Super. Anybody else? Okay. So we're asked to note the progress on delivering responsibilities detailed within the Domestic Abuse Act 2021 and scrutinise the funding allocations. I think we've posed several challenges on that, and obviously, as Rihanna has said, that will be duly noted. Are we happy to note point 1.1? Can we bit of enthusiasm, please? Thank you. 1.2, note the key successes and the programme to deliver on the Violence Against Women and Girls strategy for Thurrock 2020 and 2023. That's much better.
I'd like to actually, we put the men and boys in there.
Yes.
Because I think, as Councillor Anderson said, it's like a little footnote in the bottom. It doesn't really matter, it's just men and boys.
So we're happy to note that with the comments that we've added. 1.3, provide comment on the proposed vision and the 6 Ps to deliver the Thurrock Domestic Abuse and Violence Against Women and Girls Strategy 2023 to 2026. Again, with the comments. And I think it's important that we actually do, just add to this, a thank you to all the partnership agencies that's out there, Thurrock, and the others that manage the refuge, and all the people that actually do support work for any violence against women, girls, boys and men, because I think it is absolutely incredible what some of that work does. And I think it really doesn't, it goes very much under the radar. They don't often get a call out for the amazing work that they do 24/7, 365 days a year. So I would like that added. Thank you.
Just make a comment on that, Val. Just to say that where the refuges are, we're not really supposed to know where they are. But I do. I do, yeah, we do. So we've been around a long while, so we know where they are. But I think it's that they can't have the accolade they really need, because we don't know where they are. But as long as it can be passed back to them.
Yes, I'm not proposing that we all go round there, but I do think it's quite within the realms of this council to actually pass that back and pass that on. So I think it's important that it's noted.
Thank you so much. I will definitely pass that on.
Thank you. Right, item 8, the provision of tree surgery contract is actually no longer going to be brought to this committee. It's going straight to Cabinet, I believe, on July, which I'm a little bit bewildered on. Yes, we can, and we possibly will do if necessary. Now I'm going to ask Charlotte to introduce annual review of age-restricted products.
Hello. Sorry, I was just sorting out my microphone. Hello, I'm Charlotte Edwards. I'm the Trading Standards Manager for Thurrock Council. In front of you, you've got the annual review of age-restricted products work for 2022 and 2023, so last financial year. I just want to run through, obviously you've had time to read the report, but I just wanted to run through the key points from this report, and just to point out that it's for this committee to note the contents of the report, and obviously I'm happy to answer questions. Trading Standards team has a statutory duty to enforce a variety of legislation with regards to age-restricted products. There's a table, a hopefully helpful table there of all the goods that are age-restricted, and as I say, we do have responsibility for all the relevant legislation that covers those areas. Underage sales work makes significant contributions to the health agenda in terms of preventing youngsters under 18 having access to alcohol and tobacco, as well as obviously other harmful products and substances, etc. The work, it's quite important to note the work is intelligence-led and has to be for various reasons, which I will explain. And we do encourage information sharing from partners, residents, and obviously yourselves as members, to assist us with it being able to target our work. The main reason that it is intelligence-led is under the RIPA, so Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act 2000, we do have to seek authorisation to carry out underage sales test purchases for alcohol and tobacco. So that's just something that's important to note. I have put in there is a link to our website, and I'd just like to draw everybody's attention to it really, that there is a direct link on our council website for residents and yourselves to report incidents of underage sales of any type, so that can come straight through to Trading Standards. There's 3 aspects to our approach to the work, and that is advice, intelligence generation, and then underage sales test purchases. So we spend a lot of time advising businesses and obviously working with responsible retailers. We promote a responsible retailer scheme, which we've been promoting since 2018 within the borough. As part of that, we encourage all retailers to adopt a Challenge 25 policy, where a customer looks 25 or younger, they're asked to provide identification to prove they're over 18. And this is now an industry standard that's followed in the vast majority of shops. In terms of intel generation, obviously we're always looking to partners to provide information, so I'm talking about the police, youth groups, those sorts of organisations. but we also go out ourselves and create our own intelligence by using a member of staff who's aged 18 or 19 to go into shops and try and test purchase age-restricted products just to test the systems and see how those businesses are applying their own policies. And then the final sort of tool in our armoury is to do an underage sales test purchase. As I said, we do have some restrictions in terms of we do have to go to a magistrate to get approval to carry out covert test purchases for this under RIPA, and that's just for tobacco and alcohol. But we go out, we use young volunteers that are sort of, you know, local to the borough. So, you know, confident young people aged between 15 and 16 years of age, and they work with us under our direction to go out and try and test purchase certain items. So for last year, we had 132 engagements with businesses. This included 98 advisory visits. We also did a test purchase operation where we undertook 7 test purchases, and that was just to note that was in relation to vapes, which is, hopefully you're all aware that that is quite a topical area of work for us at the moment, particularly with regards to young people. So just to point out sort of the year ahead, this current financial year that we're in, the government has announced that there's going to be some funding available in terms of going out and tackling illicit vapes, and they've sort of termed it as the illicit vapes enforcement squads. That is, for want of a better description, trading standards teams. So obviously we'll be looking to, you know, apply for funding, etc. We are already ahead of the curve of this. We've already done a vape project last year, and we're looking to continue that work as well, particularly with regards to the underage sales. And we would very much like to get out and get on with this underage sales work for this new financial year. That's it, Chair. Happy to take
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Anybody like to come in on that? Councillor Hurrell.
Yeah, thank you very much for the report. 2.4. What are the plans to really enforce this, as the statistics seem quite weak to me? There's only resulting in 2 sales. You had 7 underage test purchases resulting in 2 sales. What will this be going forward? Will you be keeping your foot down on it, sort of thing? That'll do with this.
Thank you. Yeah, happy to come back and explain that a little bit more. So yeah, you are right. Those particular figures, they do seem quite weak in terms of we did 7 underage sales test purchases last year, and we got 2 sales. What we are aiming to do for this year is we really want, and this is why I wanted to bring this report as well, is to really push the fact we are crying out for intelligence. What we found, obviously COVID's, you know, it is not quite distant, but it is in the past. During COVID, we saw a massive drop, as you would expect, in terms of receiving intelligence reports on underage sales. Things are starting to sort of pick up a little bit. As I say, we are restricted to ensuring that we have got suitable intelligence so we can meet the requirements of RIPA for doing the covert side of the work. And, you know, as I say, it is starting to pick up. I would like to push the online reporting tool that we've got. So all members, if you could share that with your colleagues as well, and obviously residents that you're dealing with as well, so we can go out and tackle those businesses that are creating problems. We do a lot of work with, as I say, your genuine retailers, and obviously trying to work with them and help them to comply, you know, where required. But obviously, and we also focus with those that we know aren't quite as genuine. And as I say, the only way to catch them out is to do the underage sales. So that is what we would like to do this year, is to really try and push those and take them to task where possible.
Did you want to come back, Councillor Hurrell, or not?
Yes, please, yes. Thanks very much for that. 3.1, it says in there the government are looking to invest £3 million of funding for the illicit vapes enforcement squads. Has Thurrock seen any of this money? And if so, where is it and what is being done with it? And also, is it ring-fenced for this issue and not being used towards paying off the debt of the council?
We haven't received the money as yet. So when the government made the announcement, it hadn't quite finalised how the money was going to be distributed to local authorities. So I believe that national trading standards are currently in discussions with the government as to how that funding is going to be sort of distributed. The suggestion so far has been that trading standards on a national scale sort of sits within a regional network. So, for example, we sit within East of England trading standards. So the suggestion is that each of those regions will get a pot of money that is then divided by however many members there are within that region. So we haven't received it. So when it is received, it will be ring-fenced and it will come to trading standards to do this work.
One more, Councillor Hurrell, and then I know Councillor Anderson is desperate to speak.
Well, there's two questions there anyway. Well, one's a statement, the other one's a question. Is there a quote on how many vape shops that sell vapes that can be on a high street? Because in takeaways there is. So it'd be interesting to know if there is, if you can have too many, and if so, can we look into reducing that if need be? And also a statement really now. We're calling the council to lobby the government to licence tobacco and vape products. At present, only alcohol is licensed, I believe. Thank you.
In terms of the number of vape shops, as you say, I don't fully know, but I am aware that you can only have so many kebab shops. You know, there's no provisions that I'm aware of at this moment with regard to vape shops. I think that would be a very good idea. With regards to the licensing scheme, you are right. At the moment, there is only a licensing scheme for the sale of alcohol. I know that some years ago there was discussions about possibly introducing a licensing scheme for tobacco sellers. I don't believe, well, that wasn't taken forward because, you know, they're not currently licensed. It is something that I personally think should be considered, and it'd be great, you know, if as Thurrock Council it's something we could potentially lobby government for, but that would be what we would have to do. I am aware that there are discussions, as I say, from a national trading standards point of view, so on the national agenda, that is something that local authorities and trading standards departments around the country are very interested in seeing. And what I would add to that is, in terms of local authorities, obviously we are all cash strapped. You know, lots of local authorities have financial difficulties, and it would be an income stream if we were able to charge a licence fee, as we do now for alcohol sellers, for tobacco sellers, and also vape sellers as well. So definitely something to think about.
With the amount of vape shops in Thurrock, I think we probably pay off the Thurrock Council debt. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your report, Charlotte. You've actually already answered one of my questions, so just the one from me, and that is, have you got people in your team that trend? Obviously, if you're collecting data, info going forward, if you can trend this, spot patterns for whatever, then you can better target going forward. There's none of that in here, and I'm not necessarily saying that we need to see it, just wondering if you've got anyone in your team that does trending.
Yes, so we don't have a designated officer, but we do have an officer that takes responsibility for sort of building intelligence. And as I say, as you say quite rightly, looking at trends. It's one of the things that we have to do within trading standards. We've got 300 pieces of legislation that we need to enforce. So we have to look at the intelligence-led approach and looking at trends, patterns, all of those things to really ensure that we target our efforts in the right place. So, yeah, absolutely, we have got those skills available to us.
Thank you. Finished? Perfect. Councillor Redstone.
Thanks, Chair. Just to pick up, I wasn't going to come in, but just pick up on what Councillor no, and I'll try and keep quiet most of the time again. But it's just picking up on the shops that we have got that are selling vapes, and we're told that I don't know enough about vapes, so I'm not knowing too much about what they contain, but I think we're being told that they are nearly as bad as smoking a cigarette. And Chair was saying that there's quite a few shops. I noticed coming home from Grays the other night, There's a big one just opened up in Southend Road. It is massive. And it was 10 o'clock and it was still open. You know, there was no one in there, obviously, but someone was sitting in there. I think there's got to be some legislation somewhere that to open a big shop like that with, you know, it's massive. There's probably 2 shops in one, and it's massive, and it's just sitting there, and you think, to be open that late as well, you know, what customers are they taking in there? Perhaps that's something we ought to be looking into.
Anybody else wish to come in? Any other councillors? No? So, as you can imagine, I have a comment. You know, obviously... Pardon? Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to come back on that. You are quite right in terms of vapes and sort of, you know, where they are and, you know, how they're potentially regulated. What I would say is it's a really niche product and a really niche market. And I think only now enforcement agencies and the government are really starting, and this is why we're seeing all the headlines and the news about this. Professor Whitty was, you know, put an article out in a newspaper just last week, I think it was, about sort of the dangers and whatnot. So it's a niche product, it's a niche industry, we're only just catching up. In terms of, you know, sort of vapes and how good or bad they are for you, I know that the public health message is if you've never smoked, don't vape, but if you do smoke, then vaping is slightly better for you. You know, and that's the sort of public health message. But yeah, definitely, hopefully, you know, the government sounds as if they're on it. They're you know, putting up this money that's going to come to local authorities to help support us. We've tried to tackle it, and hopefully with a bit of pressure, you know, we can have things like licensing schemes and have some sort of restrictions, because I think it's long overdue. It is quite scary. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got a question for Lee Nicholson. Wake up. Okay, replanning. Is there anything that can be done for shop usage? And obviously somebody said, you know, you can't have so many, it's like you can't have 2 supermarkets together, it's a conflict of interest, you couldn't have like 10 kebab shops next to each other. Is there anything that we can do, one for the opening hours of shops in their planning consent, and for what they are able to sell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So in terms of the use, so it'd be use classes orders. So
You need to speak up, Lee.
Can you hear me okay? Is that better? So in terms of, so if you imagine a typical high street, you have a range of shops which will be in different use classes. Typically your retail use would be an A1 use, which is your most common shop, as it were. There are, along our parades in the borough, there will be planning policies which will set out the number of, or the proportion of retail that needs to be protected within those parades. But of course, the trouble with the vapes sales is that they would typically fall within that retail use. So in many ways, our policies in trying to protect the retail elements of our parades will actually, in a way, promote the sale of these types of products. If you imagine your news agents and the like, they would typically fall within the same use. So what Charlotte was just talking about in terms of licensing is absolutely the right way to go about it. And if that is something that the government can bring forward, then that's something which I think we would really support. In terms of opening hours, so opening hours will vary typically between shop unit and based upon the planning permissions that would have been granted, but certainly if members were concerned about a particular shop unit in the borough and felt that the hours of operation weren't in accordance with the planning permission that was granted, certainly that's something that the team can look at. And if it is found that they are in breach of their opening hours, that's something that we as a service can enforce against.
Very comprehensive, thank you. As I say, I do think we should get behind. You're right. Yeah. I do think we should try and as a council, we should lobby government to see if we can get some form of licensing for vapes and for tobacco, because I think it would, you know, we are looking at our young people here. And, you know, I know that you see a lot of school children walking along with vapes that are all looking extremely attractive and possibly quite trendy. So is it something that we can also ask for what they did with the cigarette packaging, for very plain and bland packaging, because it just takes that attractiveness away from it. I'm really not sure what the next steps would be, but we'd sort of hand that over to you as a possible recommendation. Anybody else wish to speak on this? You're very quiet. Okay, let's have a look at the report. So really there is only one recommendation here on 1.1. It's really to note the contents of the report. Everybody happy? Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
I think we could note something on that.
Yeah, and is it possible that we can add on that we urge the council to lobby government to look for licensing? I don't know if that's appropriate or not.
It's fine, you can add it as another recommendation. You can propose that, and as long as it's seconded.
1.2. 1.2. I'm going to propose that we urge the council to lobby government to look to licensing tobacco and vaping products. Is anybody happy to second that? Seconding. Whoever, Councillor Harrell, Councillor Redsall. Are we happy to agree that as a committee? Thank you. We're now going to move to Anita Keiki-Orley to report on the waste report.
Thank you, Chair. Right, hopefully you can hear me all clearly. Just by way of introduction, the collection service was remodelled, operating with 26 rounds post the adoption of the municipal waste strategy back in 2021. Due to the round size and the volume of the work in that particular operating model, the completion of rounds was not achievable, resulting in inconsistent delivery and at times service failure during 2022. The subsequent service review and development of a waste improvement plan included a review of the establishment and the service structure to ensure that the structure and establishment numbers are sufficient for optimal service delivery. The review looked at the service in its entirety and sought to balance the rounds to create achievable and completable workloads on all rounds. Consequently, the number of rounds increased from 26 to 28, and in addition, a buddy system has been established whereby crews help each other out if there are problems encountered during the course of the day, and that's to ensure that work is completed consistently. The delivery of the statutory services of refuse and mixed dry recycling have recovered, and we're now operating a consistent service in these areas with levels of missed bins and levels of complaints reducing. However, as described at 2.8 and 2.9, current levels of establishment are not sufficient to allow for the consistent operation of a service collecting 3 waste streams at the established frequency of collection, that being weekly general and recycling collections with green waste collected every 2 weeks. Consequently, the brown bin service, the green waste collection service, is not a consistent and reliable service for our residents, leading to poor levels of customer satisfaction. We're now into the spring-summer months whereby organic waste is at its heaviest, and without the correct number of staff to deploy for this service, it's not possible to consistently collect this waste, and that is what we've been experiencing. This paper considers a range of options for service delivery. Paragraphs 3.4 through to 3.43 provide the detail. These are fully costed and modelled in Table 1. And if I may, Chair, I just want to draw your attention to Table 1, Option 5. There's a slight, there's some incorrect statement there. It says a fortnightly refuse collection. That should actually say fortnightly garden waste, so that it's consistent with Option 5 in the written body of the report. So that's just a sort of typo, but just to draw your attention to that. Option 5 is recommended as an interim solution to the interim solution to the collection of garden waste whilst maintaining a regular service for the other waste streams. And to clarify, this option maintains a weekly general waste collection service with recycling and garden waste collected on alternate weeks. This particular option is recommended on the basis that members agree a full strategic review of waste services, and that review will be to examine the type, level and options for service delivery that are consistent with both current and future projected budget considerations, the need to consider changing demographic, increase in housing growth for instance, and other service pressures that we're likely to encounter, as well as the changes to legislation referenced at 2.5 and 3.1. The committee are invited to comment on the proposals and the recommended way forward in order that its views may be taken into account by Cabinet when it meets to consider this item at its meeting tomorrow. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I have some things that I'd like to sort of talk about, and I'm sure every other councillor here is chomping at the bit to come in. So some of the things that I've sort of noted, that this possibly will be the third waste strategy that we've had since 2020-2021, which is now going to be called a waste implementation plan. I'm concerned that we've tried it twice and it really hasn't worked, and we're now on to a third, but I urge, and I really do look and urge that we do look at this with a common sense approach, along obviously with a commercial view is considered. Now, I know that in the background that officers have been working with colleagues that are actually doing the job of loading, driving, planning, etc. But for me, it's really difficult to implement change unless you've got your colleagues with you and you've got full engagement and you've got a culture that actually is positive in there. And we have seen over the past couple of years a complete lack of trust, disengagement and really poor morale, which you know there's a natural correlation that you will have increased sickness and things like that happen. So what I'm asking for is when we look at the waste implementation plan going forward, that we really do involve people that do the job. So we involve loaders, we involve a couple of drivers, some of the people that are, you know, working in the planning department, because actually their views are really invaluable. Something I was thinking about and how we can manage the increase in demographics, because we know housing is going up all over the borough, and that will put a stretch on reserves and services and service providers. If we looked at something, and you know, not going to solve it here, but a cost per bin to empty, you would be able to identify when rounds are out which ones are productive, which ones aren't. And if you suddenly saw one that is really, really high, you can understand what are the reasons behind that increase of a cost to empty a bin. You can see if the rounds are balanced, because realistically you should probably have a balance across the borough, apart from when they're driving literally from down in Purfleet all the way over to the east of the borough, because obviously you've got some dead, wasted, unproductive time there. But I think there's other options of different ways that we can be looking at things. We look at, and I welcome the fact that there is a basic common sense now being addressed in this report to bring back the brown bin, which has probably had more comebacks than, as they used to say, Frank Sinatra ever had. I do look, and I think we have failed our residents, and we've failed them on the basics. We've had miscommunication, poor communication, lots of mixed messages out there. We've made a very simple job, which it is, emptying a bin, replacing it, into a complete nightmare, an extremely complicated affair. And I just think we need to go back to some real basics. And, you know, it really is, if we look at the effect this has had on our residents, and, you know, we're all sat here as residents, as councillors, I know that I'm quite frustrated, irritated. You know, is them recycling the top of everyone's agenda, or do they just want to get stuff in the bins, to be honest, which then poses a problem downstream where you've got contaminated loads and obviously you've got to have a resort. You know, we've got to get the trust of our residents back. And, you know, one of the things I think that concerns me in this report and on the option 5, we talk about an interim solution. You know, the cynic in me is saying, does that mean it's a one going to... Yeah, are we just going to empty the brown bin once more? Are we going to do it for a month? Are we going to do it for 5 months? Are we going to do it for 6 months? Or are we giving our residents the actual assurance we will do this until there is a fully costed waste implementation plan that is going to give success to our residents? Because I think the cynic in me would really question that word interim. And I just think we've really got to understand how we get the engagement back with the colleagues that do the job, with our residents, to get our residents recycling. Our recycling levels are diabolical. They're really poor. You know, we are going to end up being fined by the government. So how can we get that message back that it's sort of cool to recycle again, using the right bins, getting a very clear message about what you can and can't put in? I'm not going to carry on because I think there's a lot of things that we should be doing. One of them is making sure our vehicles can get in and out of the roads. And, you know, is it the question, Michael, that we get your parking enforcement to probably go round, especially London Road? It's an absolute nightmare. Then, you know, there's poor residents in Ankle and Flint Street in Grays Thurrock probably very rarely ever get their bins emptied because you can't get a vehicle in and out. Shouldn't we be doing something like that going forward to just try and help these guys do their job? No one goes to work every day to do a bad job. So I'm just going to be quiet then, and I know that's difficult to believe, and hand over to you to give some comments.
Okay, I'll try and take them in order. I hope I don't miss anything. So I think it's safe to say we've only had one waste strategy, and that's been adopted by the council, and that is what we're working towards in the long term. There has been a subsequent waste improvement plan. That was last year when the service wasn't operating as it should. So there is a difference between the two. I just wanted to make sure that we were working at the same. So the waste strategy looks at what we are planning in terms of our recycling rate. The waste improvement plan looked at actual operations in the here and now and what we needed to do to deliver consistent collections. So that was why the waste improvement plan was developed. The waste improvement plan picked up on many of the points that you raised, Councillor, in terms of the engagement and the staff and the lack of trust. We have done a lot of work on that. We are in the process of developing an engagement plan, but that aside, we are absolutely engaging with our workforce. So, for example, when we rebalanced the rounds actually got put up on the walls for comments from the staff. So they were able to write anything down or come and talk to us. We listened to what they had to say, and if there was an issue with one of the rounds, we changed them, or we worked with them to see how we could change them. So there was absolute engagement, and we do continue to do that. I'm in many mornings at 5 a.m. to talk to them about, you know, the changes within the council so that they're aware of everything that is going on. So we are really working towards gaining their trust and building their trust. And I really do believe that that is an area that has had big improvements. In terms of looking at cost per bin, the industry standard is looking at a cost per household, so it's slightly different, but absolutely we can, and I don't have that to hand, but we do have that. And in terms of looking at balanced rounds, it's not just about the number of houses and the distance travelled, it's obviously about the tonnage we collect. So often we have to look at the whole picture, not just the collection regime. It needs to be looked at in conjunction with the tonnages we collect, so that, you know, for example, someone might be travelling a very long way, but the houses might be sparsely separated out, whereas someone else might be collecting a lot of houses, but they're all together, but the tonnages could be equal. So we do look at the whole picture there. And we are actually, as part of the long-term strategy, we are carrying out at the moment a round optimisation so that we can implement those changes, but I'll talk about those in a little bit more detail in a moment. Yeah, absolutely agree with you in terms of our communications. They 100% could have been a lot better, and there's no excuse, and I don't have one. So
I appreciate your responsibility for that. Thank you. Not you personally, per se, by the way, but I appreciate that your department has taken ownership of that. I think it's really important. So thank you.
Yeah, we're absolutely working to make that better. You know, we utilise the website, but absolutely appreciate that. You know, not all residents can access that. So with the service changes, there will be a leaflet going to every single household. Yes, there will be an email mail out that can go to anybody that is registered, and obviously we'll be utilising all our social media and website as well. In terms of recycling rates, yes, our recycling rate absolutely needs improvement. And our overarching waste strategy aims to address that. So if I address that with what does an interim solution mean? So as part of our waste strategy, we are planning to go to a fortnightly residual waste collection, so domestic waste. The recycling will go back to weekly. There will be a weekly food waste service and a fortnightly garden waste service. So the plan, I can't give you the exact timings for that at the moment, because it's all based around the balancing of those rounds. So that piece of work that I said that was going on at the moment, and that will be completed by November this year. And so once that's in place, we can have a timetable of when those changes have been implemented. But what interim means is that until exactly what you said, until a fully costed model for the waste service has been identified, that this interim solution is in place. The only suggestion within the report is that in the month of December, when green waste is at its absolute lowest, we go back, and packaging waste is at its absolute highest, we get rid of the, or not get rid of, we stop temporarily the garden waste service, and we adopt a weekly recycling service so that we can collect the extra packaging for December and January, because there's obviously a catch-up period in January. So that's what's recommended in the report. So the aim of the long-term waste strategy, by restricting the residual waste to a fortnightly collection, that will increase the recycling rate. And obviously the fact that we haven't been running a consistent garden waste service means that our recycling rate has dipped as well. So those two things are like the perfect storm for a bad recycling rate. In addition, it just is worth just pointing out that our contamination rate within our recycling bin is around 15%. It's not overly high, but if we can reduce that contamination rate, then obviously our recycling rate will be better. We do work with our parking colleagues and colleagues in our road transport teams to look at the parking issues, and we have done, there are some successful examples of where lines have been put in. Obviously, it is all work in progress, and on occasions, what wasn't a problem one week can be a problem the next. So but we absolutely do take on that work and are working successfully with our colleagues.
Thank you. I do urge you to look at Ankle Street and Flint Street, because, to be honest, they are constantly have got problems. I really do appreciate your feedback on some of those things, and I do think it's important. All we want as residents is common sense to prevail, and the fact that you don't collect, you're proposing not to collect the brown bins in December and January is absolutely obvious, and that's what our residents want from us: common sense, but consistency. Right, Councillor Anderson, I'm going to let you come in now.
Thank you for presenting the report, Anita. So, first question I had, in a nutshell, is this correct? So the report says that we currently have 108 staff, and it says that the service would need to increase levels to 114 staff to ensure the consistent delivery of the brown bin service, right? So what I'm asking is that the reason we're currently unable to provide the service we have been providing?
Okay, so just to clarify then, in the report, it talks about 114 staff. That's to deliver a week, that would be what is required to deliver a weekly collection of general waste, a weekly collection of recycling, and every 2-week collection of the brown bin or the green waste. Okay, we're not, in terms of our base budget, we are not and have never been resourced to that level in terms of the funding available. Okay, and what the report describes is the amount of resource that we actually do have within the budget and how actually we can deliver a consistent collection service within those resources. And therefore, that is why it's recommending that there is a move away from a weekly collection of 2 waste streams with a bi-weekly of 1 to actually the other way round, such that you've got 2 waste streams that are being collected once every 2 weeks and 1 waste stream being collected weekly. By doing that, we are able to deliver a consistent service within the existing budgetary arrangements and the numbers that are described within this report.
So at the moment, we have 108 staff.
Yes.
Right, and around about how long have we had that? Have we had that 108 staff for the past 6 months, year, couple of years? What?
I mean, I've been in post since December, and they've been in place since December. But I think I don't know the exact date. Is what I'm trying to say. Sorry.
Okay, because I'm just wondering if the issue here is we don't have enough staff. In a nutshell, we don't have enough staff in order to, as you say, have 2 streams weekly, 1 stream bi-weekly, and we've had the same number of staff that we have had for the past 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever. Should we not have seen this coming down the line a bit quick? Like, why have we had the fiasco that we have had? If we've had the issue with staff and we've had the same number of staff we have had for ages, why did the issue suddenly crop up now?
Okay, if I can just clarify, the number of staff that you had last year, I believe, was 98 staff, and that we were then given permission to increase that by a further 10 staff, which brought it up to 108. And in terms of so that's in terms of the numbers of staff. Okay, so that you have on the books you only had 98. We've had 108 since the beginning of the year. Okay, obviously you've got turnover, and so I can't say we've had 108 staff exactly every day of the week throughout those months. It would have fluctuated slightly, but that's the resource that we've been working to since we were provided with access to that resource.
So what I'm saying is, I feel as though this could have, we could have seen this coming, right? I don't know if we did see this coming and we didn't act, but we know, summer's coming up every year. It comes every year. We've had the staff that we have had since the beginning of the year, and this all seemed to be, not very well handled. We just suddenly. No brown bins. There was, are we going to get brown bins a couple of months? It was all very over a sort of short period of time. This came up, and I don't know. Do you feel as though, in hindsight, that the department could have seen this come in a little earlier than perhaps it did? Could it have handled this better?
Yeah. So we took we did the round rebalancing, and that's when the issue was identified. When we did identify that issue, we did go and seek to get additional staff to cover the rounds, but we were unable to do that due to the budget constraints. And then the next course of action was to come to Cabinet with the options. And obviously, this has been the first audience that we could have got.
Yeah, and I think it's worth just adding that in that intervening period, we have been, we were endeavouring with the resource that we've got to try and collect all of the waste streams, and that's why you've had an inconsistent service, because we were unable. What we've proven is we were unable to do that consistently, which is why some of the communications were such that residents were not clear in many respects, because we felt that yes, we should be able to deliver that this week, looking fine, and all you needed was somebody, you know, a number of staff to go sick or something to happen. It was that fragile that therefore it would fall over, which is why we've now brought that report, because we've brought before you, before Cabinet tomorrow, in order that we can get a decision to enable us to deliver 2 waste streams on a 2 weekly basis and 1 on a weekly basis, because that is something we believe we can sustain, but we're unable to sustain 2 streams on a weekly basis and 1 every 2 weeks.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I'm not going to carry on labouring that point. All I will say is, I'm sure you're already aware, you know, I've received a lot of expressions of disappointment from residents that, you know, we are in this situation. Obviously, I just, you know, it's my job to express that. So you know, I understand you're probably very disappointed as well with the way things have gone, and residents certainly are too. I'll let other people crack on though. So just one last quick question: if we agree the recommendations here tonight, if Cabinet goes to Cabinet tomorrow, Cabinet agree the recommendations, we go for option 5, whatever. When's the next time that my residents get their brown bin collected?
Do you want to just pick up on the dates?
Yes, so in terms of the date, the first collection, if it's agreed, the first collection of garden waste will be the 26th of June.
Thank you, that's enough.
Anybody else wish to speak? So, Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. So it's really good to hear that you said you're engaging with the workforce, because I think that's really important, because they are doing the job day to day, and if there's any, they would know the issues, because they're actually trying to solve them as they're doing their jobs. On the actual item 5, a few points. Firstly, if we go into fortnightly recycling collections, does this mean that we would not meet our government targets, and is there a financial implication to that, and if so, how much is it, and how is it factored in on the cost of the proposals or what the council will save, etc. When would there be an impact on the recycling, as in the week after we've emptied the brown bins, there being more recycling, and could the refuse vehicles be able to cope with the weight? Would that have an impact on whether we can get that recycling done that week, because you've got more, obviously? And also, you talked about the long-term strategy about a bin caddy. And so that's going to mean, on the practical, it's potentially 4 bins per household, because you'll have your general waste, you'll have your recycling, your brown bins, and now the bin caddy, which will be for the food waste. So it's another big change for residents. Some properties in our borough are struggling with free bins. You can just about get into their front door with free bins. So on a practical level, I'd be interested to work out how those properties would manage with a 4th, which probably sounds really silly, but there's not all properties have the available space for another bin. And also just sort of about the impact on the workforce of collecting those recycling bins, if they're heavier, the impact on their well-being, and the cost of amending or changing vehicles to be able to use the caddy when the caddy is, if that's the route we go down on the waste strategy. And also the obvious one is there any way we could start lobbying government and trying to get the companies not to promote or pack so much, so we don't end up with so much recycling in the first place? So a lot of things you buy now, they come in massive boxes, and they don't always need to be boxes as big as that or as much packaging. I just wondered if there is a cause to lobby government on a better way, so we're not using so many resources and therefore not needing to recycle so much. Thank you.
I'll pass that over to you two.
Okay, government targets, there are none at the moment. There are no statutory targets at all. There are national targets, but there is nothing in place in terms of what is imposed on the local authorities. So we don't have to, I was going to say we don't have to worry. We obviously want a good recycling rate, but we don't have to worry in terms of not meeting a government target. Impacts on recycling. So yes, the bins will be heavier, but recycling is large in volume and not so high in weight. So it will be comparable to what is collected in the refuse bins on a weekly basis. So there shouldn't be an impact onto the workforce, but this is one of the reasons why we introduced our buddying system, so that if a round is struggling, they work in 2s and 3s to help each other out. So we will spread the load. And equally, if someone comes back and is unable to complete due to the weights or the volumes, we will address that by looking at the rounds. So the rounds aren't set in stone. We can absolutely look at them and change them. Food waste. So food waste becomes a statutory duty imposed by the Environment Act next year. So from 2024, we have to be providing our residents, and this is key, a separate food waste collection. It cannot be commingled with garden waste. We are running a trial at the moment, which is literally rolling out this week. So we are delivering the caddies. The caddies are 23 litres, so sort of yay big. In the borough where I live, we can put them on top of our bin. They don't take up the footprint that a wheelie bin does at all, and you can store them in a different way. So that, like you said, obviously many properties can't deal with 4 bins, and so this is it. Whilst it is a bin, it is different. In terms of how it will work with the vehicles, this is why we're running the trial, so that we can learn. Obviously, when you roll out a new scheme, there's always mistakes made. There's always better ways of doing things. So we want to learn from rolling out to a small group of people. We've got residents' feedback. We've got websites set up for any feedback that they wish to give us. And then we're also doing it paper-based as well. So we can obviously feedback with regards to that trial to let you know how it's all going. I think I've addressed the impact on the workforce already. Is that okay? And in terms of lobbying the government, so there is good news on this. So part of the Environment Act, there were 3 major reforms to waste management. The first one is something called extended producer responsibility, which basically means it's a polluter pays principle. So the government are changing the way that waste is funded going forward, in that anybody that produces packaging waste will be fully responsible for the cost of collection, transport and disposal or recycling of that packaging waste. So the government are currently reforming how that system is going to work. There is going to be something called a scheme administrator that will be the kind of middleman between the producers and the local authorities, and managing how that flow of funding works and how the performance data works, because obviously anyone funding this type of scheme will want to know the performance coming out of it to make sure that they're getting value for money for what they're doing. So that's one key area of reform that is already underway. The second one is something called a deposit return scheme. So the government are going to introduce, and this won't particularly affect us in terms of our collection systems, but they're introducing a bit like the old days when you had a glass bottle when you paid 10p extra and then you got it back. So they're going to introduce reverse vending machines in places like supermarkets and anywhere that you buy kind of on-the-go single-use plastics or cans. Glass isn't included at the moment, but I think that may be reviewed going forward. So Scotland are a little bit ahead of us on this. They're introducing this really soon, and we are following up on that as well. The third one has escaped my mind of what the third reform is. I've missed that.
I think you answered it first, actually.
Have I? Okay.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm just going to go to Councillor Pearce and then Councillor Redsaw.
Right, thank you, Chair. I think all these bins that we're all going to be lumbered with, and we still can't get it right. And I think back, I'm really going back a few years now, when we were only used to have one bin, which was metal, and we never seemed to have a lot of trouble then. And what did we do with all the waste? We still have those that had gardens. We used to compost. My father had a compost heap, so any food or garden waste used to go to that. And also, I know I'm not encouraging it, but they used to have bonfires. But I'm not pushing that forward. But can we have like a good comms campaign to encourage more people to compost? I know you can get from B&Q about, I think it's about £32 upwards or something, but to encourage more people to do it so that the compost, you know, it's just something that needs to be thought of more and publicised more and encourage people more to do this. So then we'll have less waste in that regard of garden waste and such. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do provide, there is a link on our website to how to compost and also directs people to supplies of compost bins. That is what we do at the moment. I mean,
it's about people who haven't got the website or not got it.
I guess the issue is a resourcing issue because obviously comms costs a lot of money and it's a budgetary issue over how we can provide that service.
So one thing I would suggest, we've got an opportunity because you said you were going to leaflet everybody. So let's get behind it, you know, let's get people looking at composters because, you know, going out and buying compost in B&Q or somewhere it's not cheap, you know, and the cost of living. And if people have got that opportunity to do their own, it's actually good for the environment as well. So, you know, let's just add that onto there on how they can contact the council to get something like that. Councillor Redsaw.
Have you got 2 days? Because it could take a while with what I've got written down. I think you've answered a couple of them. No, you've answered a couple of questions for me. So I think we should go a bit further than December and January. I don't know why we're collecting it in November because you don't really need anything in November. So I think you could do a 3-monthly leave alone because there isn't much in November in gardens. So I think we could have gone a bit further with that. I've got to say, on the whole, refuse collectors are good. You know, we've got to remember that we have, on the whole, got good staff who will help. I was told the other day an elderly lady of 85 took her waste, garden waste, over the tip and went up the stairs with a great deal of difficulty, got to the top, couldn't get it into the bins, it was too high. Asked one of the refuse collectors to help her and he said no. So that is the sort of thing that puts all our refuse collectors and anybody that works at the tip in the same vein. They all go down as everybody is in the same, you know. And most of us here who sit here at the moment, we must have been inundated with the bins. You know, it's just a nightmare. Other places don't have the bother we have. And I don't know why sometimes we have the trouble we have. I think you said you was talking to the staff about how you can get down the streets. Perhaps, you know, and I'm not telling you your job, don't think that, but perhaps come to the members as well because we can give you information where you, you know, you can use that information that we've got. You know, we can give you that. I think the leaflet you put out a little while ago has just gone out to people's houses, isn't it? But in there, it doesn't tell you what to do with light bulbs. It tells you not to put the light bulbs in the bin, but it doesn't tell you where to put the light bulbs. We know batteries go to the library, so that's fine, you know. But I think there's lots of, we've got to get social media right, we've got to get the comms team right, we've got to, people worry more about their bins than they do about a sort of integrated medical centre going in Corringham. They were more worried about the bins because it's their bins they see every day. And when they're not collected, that gets on their nerves. So they come to us and moan at us. So I think we've got to get it, we've got to get this right now. You know, it's no good coming, I've just spoken to the chair, I just said, I think if this goes to Cabinet tomorrow, it has to come back to us. You know, there has to be something else that we, you know, we can say about this. I think we've got to get it right this time. We can't get it wrong. We are going to take flack, you know, and I know you take a little bit of flack, but we see all the residents, they just get in touch with us. So we've got to get it right this time. I think that's about, because you've had most of it. The waste, the food waste, peelings and potato peelings and vegetable peelings, I don't know where I heard it from, but I heard that you can put that in the normal waste. It's not toxic. So I don't understand why we need that to go
I'll let you take
in
that.
the food waste, yeah.
No, so food waste isn't toxic, but it's an absolute resource. And putting it, not utilising it for, so our food waste contract will be, the cost per tonne is much, much less than sending it to an energy from waste plant. And we can create electricity from it and fertiliser. So there is a use to it. And obviously there is a use when it's sent to an energy from waste plant, but the carbon benefits from sending it to an anaerobic digestion plant where the electricity and fertiliser is produced is much better.
Are we actually sending it out the borough, or is it in the borough, so it's producing electricity for the borough?
No, it's outside the borough. There isn't a plant in the borough.
How are we going to collect the electricity from it?
You wouldn't anyway. But that's what they've said.
Well, we don't. The electricity is sent back to the grid. Yeah. So it's not
nothing's
here.
coming back to Thurrock?
No. Well, it's going back to the grid in general. I don't know specifically where it is, but the plant isn't near us.
Okay, so just a couple of bits from me. I am aware that if people do want a bigger bin, they can have a bigger bin if there's a problem. I know a lot of people have got enough bins, but some people with larger families with recycling. I think it was a really good point that Councillor Ken brought up about forward packaging. If we know that reducing plastic is a huge initiative, you know, and really reducing packaging. And I welcome what you say, because in my head, I'm seeing that is really similar to the CO2 when you offset your CO2 when you're flying somewhere if you're producing packaging. So thank goodness we've got a huge Amazon in Tilbury, because actually that might bring a lot of revenue back into Thurrock with offsetting the amount of packaging that they use. So hopefully I'm right in thinking that that's how that looks. And I do think, you know, we have had a lot of negative press against everything. You know, everybody that works, as I said, within the environment and the refuse collection do not go to work every single day to do a bad job, because they don't. You know, let's just say that it's been particularly challenging for them. And let's just, you know, I really hope call it a waste strategy, call it a waste implementation plan. You can call it what you like. You know, it's going to be the third time lucky, we hope. Or, I'm telling you, we'll all be out, because residents are really at their end of their tether. This is a really basic function. And, you know, please, let's get this plan right. You know, take the time you like. What I would request, and we'll add this into the comments and maybe a 1.5 for is that I would expect to see the waste implementation plan at this scrutiny a minimum of a month before Cabinet. So I don't think that's being unreasonable. Well, you didn't, Councillor Anderson.
No, look to your recommendation on point 2 that talked about it. Put my hand up nicely and say, can we have it?
Well, I've saved you the bother, Councillor Anderson. I know. You really do like doing this, Councillor
I
Ridson.
try and keep quiet as much as possible. Was mentioned last time on whatever strategy there is. We've got, near me, I've got 2-storey flats, which were for elderly people, or it's not, doesn't work that way now, but there is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, we've got 8 flats, it works out 30 bins. So that's in 3 lots of areas. Why can't we get rid of those 30 bins and just give them 3 bins that the high-rise have? It seems to me that we're asking the refuse collectors to collect 30, 60, 90, nearly 100 bins when we could do just 3 in the area. It's been brought up before, but I've had no comeback on it.
My apologies, I thought there was a response. I know this has been looked into. I can't off the top of my head remember what it was, so I will get it to you because I
You'd
know
like
this.
to get it to all of us because I think it's a point. I think it may be a different contract that's used because of the bins that are done for flats are a different contract, isn't it?
No, same contract because it's all in-house. It's all in-house.
It's worth looking at, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's an opportunity.
Yes. Like I said, I know it's absolutely been looked into, but I can't remember.
Okay. Right, we're now going to move to the recommendations. So, option 5 to be approved as an interim. We'd like to change the wording on this until a fully costed and agreed waste implementation plan has been developed.
Yeah.
Something like that, because I think the word interim does worry me. Of garden waste, the associated change to the frequency of collection of recycling. And, you know, somehow we've got to add into this, and it might be for Cabinet to do, that we do use common sense. So just because we say we're going to collect it every 2 weeks, we don't have to when we look and we see the tonnage drop through the floor in likes of November, December, or we might just say to residents, only put your bin out if it actually needs emptying. Just because it goes out on a Friday, it doesn't have to go out on a Friday if it's not full. Are we comfortable to agree 1.1?
Yeah, if it's an interim solution taken out.
Yes, interim solution. We'd like that wording changed. Rhianna, I'll leave that to you. Thank you. So we'd like to be approved until such time as there's a fully costed and agreed waste implementation plan. Yes? Yep. Comfortable with that?
Yep.
Perfect. A full strategic review of the waste service to be undertaken provides for a sustainable service in the context of reducing budgets, increasing costs, demographic and other pressures, changing in legislation. I think we just need to we comfortable with that? Agreed? We're happy to note this. The scope of this strategic review will be developed for members' consideration, but will include the type, levels and form of delivery of this service and go to scrutiny not less than a month before Cabinet.
Come back to scrutiny. Agreed.
Wow. There we go. Item 11, we're nearly there. Work programme. Has anybody got any comments or they would like to add to the work programme? I think it's really difficult to look ahead. I think it's one of those that it needs to be fluid and that we can be flexible in what we need to do on that.
Chair, the work programme will be reviewed at the end of every meeting, so that opportunity will come at the next meeting as well.
Vincent was going to come back with the new cemetery, or something to do with the cemetery that we needed in Thurrock. We haven't got one.
If you want to email Vincent, or I'm happy to do that, I'm sure. Oh, he's on actually.
Vincent?
Yes, I'm here. I haven't run away. Yeah, more than happy to look into that.
What I think we ought to look at is, if we're looking at cemeteries, how do we manage our cemeteries currently? Because clearly it's not working particularly well. With a view of how we are looking after the grass cutting, and just in general, it just really is quite disrespectful to see the cemeteries in the state they are.
I went round the cemeteries last week. The two that had the major issue were Horringham and Stanfield-the-Hope.
Yeah.
And they have both been cut now. We had a period of very wet and warm weather where we had...
There's a surprise in the UK, isn't there?
I know. And it was quite extraordinary grass growth. That combined with the bank holidays where we lost a week of productive work meant that the schedule got stretched out from the normal 3 weeks to just over 4. However, we are now back on track.
Okay, just with the greatest of respect, May Day always has 3 bank holidays in it in May. You know, we do know how grass grows. You know, please don't say it's a bit like the railways, the trains aren't running because there's leaves on the rails. Let's just get it sorted, you know. Let's try and understand how we can prevent it going forward. So, thank you everyone. That now concludes the business of the meeting this evening. I now declare this meeting closed at 9:05 and much appreciate